Um,
I mean, with that I started at the beginning.
yeah, because then I know which are your projects and
Okay.
so.
So at the beginning, it was Yaisa and me starting at the same time, the same day, and Rob was in the lab already a few months, and then there was Ilaria. However, when we came, the lab was not set up, so it was empty.
Empty, no machines, no.
Pretty much. I mean, there were some machines that were all still originally rugged, so we started opening things and figured out that many of the things that we had were wrong and we needed to reorder. So it took Yaisa and me a long time to have the whole thing running, because we had some experience, right? But we were not really experienced with catalogs. And then Rob was supposed to help us there, but let's say that it worked so-so, depending. And then also we had a lot of misunderstandings at the beginning with Ilaria, with Rob. Yaisa and me, we always, we got along together quite well. We had our fights, we were
With
fighting
Jason.
like hell. Yeah, we had our fights, we were fighting like hell. But because we are very strong characters, right? But then I think because we are both nice people, you know, we managed to solve our problems and were quite close all the time, because there was no one else, right? But at the beginning, we didn't know Ilaria, so we didn't know what we could tell her, what we couldn't. We didn't know at the beginning. I mean, we sort of tried to figure out what we were supposed to do, which were our projects. So these we knew we could push Ilaria to ask. But then with Rob at the beginning, we didn't really know what he was supposed to do or not. We saw him, what he was doing, but it wasn't, because Ilaria told us that he should do this, but then he didn't do it, so at the end we had to do it ourselves. So it was a bit tricky at the beginning. And then also we tried to ask Ilaria and stuff, but we didn't have lab meetings at the beginning because we were so few, so few people. So then Yaisa and me, we really pushed to get lab meetings, to have, to get lab meetings and get journal clubs, but it took like 6 months to really do that. And then what was quite helpful was the program, the PhD program, because they have deadlines for you all the time. Mm-hmm. So after 3 months, you have to give a 10 minutes talk about your project. This is also what Freddie and Anna will do soon. And for this, we need to sit down with Ilaria and sort of, talk about the project and define something. So this was very useful. Also then after Christmas, Yaisa and me, we both applied for an external fellowship, where you have to write a project that is more detailed. So that was also nice to get Ilaria down to think with us, and because I think Ilaria has it all in her head, but sometimes she just doesn't tell you, really. So then there, because we needed to write that, we could write what we understood, and then Ilaria saw what we understood, and then we could smoothen it out together and get all on the same page, right? Mm-hmm. And then during this, we started to do first experiments at the beginning with the help of Ilaria, but then because she was around a lot compared to now, but still not enough for me, because I wanted to do things. So then, sometimes I started doing things without her because I knew how this is done. I did that before and things. So there were a couple of, incidences that, where things were not working so well or things like that. But then over time, you have a supervisor, you have a student, both of them have to learn how to work with each other. That was basically at the beginning, we needed to figure that out.
And so, when you started with PhD, you had one project or two?
No, basically an idea of, so the thing is with the project is that you might call something one project that really splits out into many projects,
Okay.
So it depends a bit. So you start doing experiments. So for me, I started doing experiments into 2, 3, 4, 5 different directions, and then you get first preliminary data in, and then you follow on to, what
The
gives you promising results. Exactly.
And this initial project, who has the original idea?
It was Ilaria.
Okay.
It was Ilaria.
So, okay, because Jaisa told me something about how you ended up studying here, because you went through a process of selection.
Yeah, that is true. Like when we applied here. Yeah,
so
but
and then you had, and they picked you up, and then you picked them up, something like that. Like there's 2 rounds or 3 rounds of.
Yeah. So in order to and get a job, basically, you know. So we applied in November to start in September, so almost a year before. And then, what did we apply with? So you have to write like your CV, a motivation letter, references from your former supervisors and things like this, your grades and that. And then you are selected for interviews or not. So obviously we were selected for interviews. And then you come here, the interviews are in January. And then if you want to, you can for sure come along and see these interviews because they are happening. And then what is happening there is that a lot of different group leaders are recruiting all at the same time. So in our case, there were like 20 that were looking for students. So then you have 3 days of interviews. Now basically they selected like I think 60 or 70 students for these 20 positions. And then you would be there and get introduced into the details of the different projects or the different labs and what they are working on. I mean, you already know a bit before, right? But then they give you a talk that is 10 minutes per person. And also they show you the institutes and the units and things like this. And then on the second day, there's your interview. So they ask you before to prepare a presentation about your previous work, and you have to prepare a short journal club because they want to assess what you did before, but also your intellectual capacity. Yeah, exactly that. Okay. And then you have this interview that is in total 30 minutes, something like this, in front of a committee of 3 PIs. And they then score you. According to what? I have no idea. But they score you, and then they have a database where all the students are in with the scores. And then basically after this interview, you say which groups you are interested in to do your PhD. Well, basically you do, when you initially apply, after the first day and after the second day, you say which lab you are interested in and whom you want to apply with. For me, I applied to Caetano and Ilaria.
Why? Were you interested in metastasis from the beginning?
No, I was interested in immune cells.
Okay.
I was interested in innate immune cells and how they contribute to cancer. So now Caetano's lab, it's a more immunology-based lab. They work on dendritic cells, which is another type of innate immune cell. And I wanted to, look how dendritic cells influence tumor, right? This was how I got to this institute because he's quite famous. And then I looked the other things, and then I saw Ilaria because she was new, so I had no idea, no? So then I saw the project, which was neutrophils, another type of immune cell, in tumor and metastasis. But she's more tumor cell biologist, so it's coming from the other side, no? But I was interested in both because more or less they were fitting, what I wanted to do. And then I came here and saw both of the talks and couldn't decide. And then I put them both so you can have co-first choice. So I put them both on the second last day. And then on the last day, you are invited for personal interviews. So it's the most disastrous thing. You are in the hotel, you go there at 6:30 in the morning and you pick up a letter.
Oh, yeah.
And the letter tells you are out, goodbye, or you have interviews today. So you go there, people around you laughing or crying or whatever, and you get your letter, and it's a disaster. So I got my letter, I had both interviews, like with both of them. So then I went for these interviews, which was 1.5 hours per person. So quite, more detailed and talking about the project, or depending what they want to talk about really. And then depending on how it goes, at the end you have to take your decision. Basically you have to say with whom you would like to go. So, and then with whom I wanted to go, no? Because then I did change my mind.
Really?
Yeah, I did change my mind after talking with him. Because of two things. Because first of all, I had the feeling I can work together with Ilaria, that I'm not afraid of her, no? I had the feeling she, is someone that I can work together with, and then she showed me the details of the project, and really I thought it was very interesting. When talking with Caetano, I have a lot of respect of him until this point. So I knew that it's going to be difficult for me to work with him, because I would not, feel the freedom probably to say what I really think. I don't know, but there are some people that, because maybe it's my culture, I come from a very authoritarian system. So, you know, there are people that are just above you and that's it. And with him, I very much had the feeling, also talking with him about the project, he pretty much told me that I won't really be able to do what I would like to do. He would rather like me to do something else. So obviously, that was not very, you know, what I wanted to hear. And then I put Ilaria as my first choice and Catano as my second. And then, for me, it was the same day in the evening I received the email with the offer in Ilaria's group. And then I accepted.
Great.
Well, I called my boyfriend before, but then I accepted.
Oh, and he was living where?
In Madrid.
In Madrid. Yeah.
I was living in Vienna. So basically,
It was closer.
I needed to tell him, okay, we have to move to London. And he was like, oh, really? It's like, what do you mean, really? And then we had a bit of an argument. Because he's like, oh, well, so fast. It's like, I'm talking about these things 3 months. You had a lot of time to, you know, think about yes or no. Well, maybe not. What do you mean, maybe not? If it's not, why am I here? I had the worst 3 days of my life, and now you tell me that maybe not. So then we hang up, and we were talking again an hour later. And then he decided, okay, we can go. And then I accepted.
So you both now live in London?
He was living with me here until April of this year, but he moved back to Madrid because of work. So now I'm also moving to Madrid.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so he came to London for me, no? So now I go with him. I should.
Sounds nice.
Well, it's not nice. It's what everyone would do, no?
Yeah, but sometimes couples break up because of that. And this is a nice case.
Yeah, it's true. We didn't. I don't know why. Not because. But somehow we just. Yeah, I think it's because of him. Because for him, I'm a very driven person. I'm very ambitious. I don't want to be better than other people. It's not about this. But I'm very ambitious. I'm not happy if I'm not doing my best. And I'm not happy if I, you know, I cannot. I don't want to wake up at some point and think, oh, what if? No?
Mm-hmm.
So, and for him it's not really like this. He's a lot more relaxed. So therefore, we also said, okay, we look now in Madrid because he had worked there. If I find something that I like, in case I don't find anything that I like, then we'll look together in other places. So then I found something that I liked, so there was no need to.
Nice. So, okay, you didn't know anything about the lab until September? When you
Yes,
got there?
because it was Ilaria alone when we interviewed. There were no other people. It was only her. She didn't have anyone recruited because Rob then started, I think, in May or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was long before. Well, we were there in January for the interviews. And then in May, I can't remember when he started, May or a few months before us. And then in September, Yaisa and me joined. But before, there was no lab work happening. There
Okay.
was, you know, like organizing databases or stuff. I don't know what Rob did. I have no idea what he did. But there was no experimental work happening, apart from what Ilaria did in her formal lab. That was the basis of then what we started on.
So okay, you got there to the lab, and then I'm sure you had some meetings. And
Yes
then
and no, a bit.
so
And
how do you know what you had to do?
well, because we didn't know, so we went to her and said, Ilaria, what are we supposed to do? Because at the beginning, the first few weeks, we were reading, but we didn't even know about what we should read.
And she told you and Jaisa to read some papers.
No, we were choosing what we were reading. She didn't tell us what we should read.
Okay.
So we were lost because we knew, of course, that there was this project, but we were both surprised that we were two. Because we didn't know that we were going to be two, because she had only one position. So then we were two, so we were very happy to be two, no, because it's nicer than one. But then we didn't know who was going to work on this project, if we were going to work on it together, or if there's another project. So at the beginning, the first 1-2 weeks, we were really not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So then we went to her and we told her, okay, look. So we asked her, what do you want us to do and things. So then initially Ilaria wanted Yaisa to do the project that I did and the other way around.
Sorry?
Ilaria wanted Yaitha to do my project and me to do Yaitha's project. That was how she thought to do in her head. But then...
Hi. Lisa.
But Yaitha and me said, no, can we swap?
And okay, but you had been assigned projects before.
Not before we joined the lab.
When you got to the lab, you were assigned a project.
After asking for that.
Okay, and when Ilaria changed her mind?
She didn't change her mind. We told her that we would like her to change her mind. Because she was talking with the two of us, saying that, okay, so explaining both of us, the project, so then there's this one, and then she didn't really say, but in her head, she was talking to Yaitha about this. So it was sort of obvious that she wants Yaitha to do that, And then the other project, she explained more to me, which was the screen, So then, because also Yaitha and me at this point, we didn't know, so we went out of this. Then Yaitha and me were talking, and Yaitha was like, oh, I like yours more, and I was like, oh, I like yours more. So then we went back to Ilaria and told her, look, would you mind if we could swap? Because also I explained to her, look, one of the reasons why I joined the lab was because I like the project. No, I don't want to do tumor cell biology. I want to do immune cells. And Yaitha was like, I don't like immune cells, please. So then Ilaria didn't have any problem with us swapping at all. But initially her ideas were in the other direction.
Okay, this was September. And when you had the conversation, the first one, like when she was
like a week or two after we started, so still in September, maybe beginning of October. But
and then you probably
maybe it was 1 week after. It was very early after because we were like, we need to.
And then when you ask her to swap
the same day.
Okay, the same day. Okay, so and then you had your projects and?
Well, we started reading about it first of all, reading in the direction, and started to do small experiments together with Ilaria at the beginning. So she explained me the preliminary data that she already had, and then in which directions we could go and things like this. So then I was reading about the different directions, like the different tumor models, and basically to get some background knowledge. So then we were buying the mice, and we were getting the mice from other people in the house, and started doing small experiments to basically test some techniques and things like this. And that's how we started at the beginning, basically until Christmas. We also started to have the tumor colony going, so then we started to get tumor mice. Then also Yaitha and me both, we had to learn how to work with these mice. And that how to work with these mice, like how to see when they are sick and when they are happy. And we did this animal training also before Christmas to get used to that. So until Christmas, it was basically reading and doing some small experiments to set up things.
In that stage, it was about you reading things related to
the project,
and Ilaria teaching you some techniques?
Yeah, Ilaria either teaching us some techniques or telling us, look, try this, and we try to do ourselves.
Okay.
And this was until Christmas. Over time, because then we had meetings with her every once in a while, not as regulated as we have them now, but sometimes 4 times a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks. So it depended a bit. So it was us going to her. Also, she had ideas all the time. Called us in and said, okay, I have this idea also, so let's maybe look at this also. So then, our list was growing. So there was a constant change. In my case, the core idea remained the same. And then also after Christmas, we continued like this. Then after Christmas, I started to get the mice, and I could cross them together, and I could start to analyze the mice. And also we had our first thesis committee meeting, where we again needed to sit together, and present all the ideas that were there to do for the different projects, because at this point there were really quite a few different projects, and then they would give input. The input was basically there are too many things.
And when's that?
There was end of January, beginning of February.
Yes, so that's the committee.
Thesis committee meeting, and short before Christmas we had the 10 minutes talk.
Is that relevant?
Yeah, because it's the first time that we present our project to someone outside the lab.
And you had a clear idea of what your project was?
Well, not very clear, but yeah, the direction and yeah, because we needed to, so we had it as clear as possible, no? At least the ideas behind the project.
Okay. So until, okay, let's say the thesis committee meeting, how would you describe like your, I don't know, feelings, emotions, like how did you feel?
My first thesis committee meeting was very bad.
No, but until that point, I'm talking about like the first 2 weeks when you didn't know what to do, and then when you knew what your project was.
I had the feeling until Christmas that things were not moving quick enough. I felt very much, sitting around waiting. So I tried to read and I tried to do a lot of things that at the end were completely unnecessary, but just because I was very, I don't want to say impatient, but very, I wanted to get started. No?
Mm-hmm. Anxious?
No, because there was no bad feeling with this, but I thought I have all this potential to do all these things and I cannot. So I felt bad because I had the feeling
and you couldn't because...
Well, because Ilaria had only limited time, because many of the things I just did not know how to do. Also because sometimes I wasn't really sure if I understood everything right. So that was it.
Okay, so so before you had the project, you were like wandering around, you didn't know what to do.
No, also we have to say that when we started here, there were also things that we needed, like that I needed to do outside of the
lab.
Yeah, I needed to find somewhere to live and things like this, no?
So you had time. You had time for that.
Yeah, we definitely had time for that, like juggling both things. Also at the beginning, I had a lot of obligatory common happenings from the program for all the students. So that also keeps you busy to a certain extent.
Okay, so since you were busy, you didn't have too much time to be worried about not having a project.
Well, even if you go home at 11 at night, you are worried about, what are you going to do, what is your project. It depends on the person. I'm the kind of person that goes home at 11 and is still thinking about work. And in this case, I had a basic idea to think about, but I didn't really feel able to drive the project myself because I had obvious limitations in knowledge and in experience and in ability. So then I tried to, catch up on that. So I think and also I thought we were very demanding for Ilaria at the beginning because we just were craving to get started and to do things. And
can we say that the first 2 weeks until you had the experiment assigned, it was okay because...
Well, we didn't have the experiments assigned.
No?
No. What we had there was the idea of the project. The experiments behind this we discussed over time, step by step. But it was more the big picture that we knew there.
So, but was there a change to have the big picture for you?
Yes.
And before that, what I'm trying to know is that how would you characterize this stage, this period of time? Like it was anxiety.
No, not anxiety, but like just being unsure maybe in terms of what will happen. And so what we tried to do is read very broad about the lab topic, no? And then we wanted it to become more specific.
So you read a lot and you demanded a lot from Ilaria.
Yeah.
A lot of knowledge and techniques and.
Well, this was then more after. This was becoming very demanding. Was after we had the big picture and the main idea.
Okay. Okay, and then when you got the general idea, you started like asking for, I don't know.
Well, she came with ideas that we then tried to A, understand, and B, read a bit about the background of, looking in lung cancer, looking in intestinal cancer, looking in arthritis. So I needed to read about these things because I had no idea. And then she had some ideas of the experiments that we could do. However, they were just so far in the future because we needed the mice for this. So I tried to help her organize to get these mice. And I started reading about these mice, how to, work with them and things like this. And then basically at some point we started doing small experiments that were not really experiments, they were like trials, to digest tissue for nothing really, but just for me, to learn how to do. And things like this. So this was until Christmas, me all the time asking, what can I do? Because I was reading all this already and now things, and then okay, so there's a mouse here, so you can maybe try to isolate cells from the lung. And then I did this a few times, and then always in between we were quite busy with things from the program that but they don't keep you 100% busy, but then you have 2 meetings a week, something like this.
And what was Ilaria doing all that time? Okay, but he was around in the lab, but she was also in her office.
She was in her office most of the time, organizing.
More than now? Or?
Yes and no, because then the lab needed to be organized, no? So we needed to she needed to learn how the institute is working herself. So she needed to learn how it's working with the mice, with the mouse databases. She needed to get to know all the people that are working here. She needed to get to know the different units and the protocols behind this. Needed to get to know, her boss and, all the people that work in, the administration and things like this. Starting to set up her lab, getting the money in, but then managing the money, what to buy, what not to buy. And, also setting up inside the lab, what do we have, what do we buy, how do we make catalogs of these, what goes where, things like that. So you are very busy at the beginning, because you basically have to set up the whole lab, and that is taking away a lot of time. Also with the mice, making sure that all the mice are coming from either Switzerland or from where we buy them or from other people in the house. Then also what you needed to do was to write the project license for the mice. And I imagined a lot of other things.
Okay. So at the beginning you mentioned something like you had some argument with her and with Jay. So was that in this stage until Christmas, or that was later?
What do you mean arguments?
Arguments, like you had some problems, discussions with...
No, that was later.
Okay, yeah.
No. With Ilaria, I never really had an argument.
No, but you have misunderstandings, or you were not happy with the way she was like transferring...
Let's say I was probably very impatient and I wanted things to move quicker, but I did never have an argument or a fight with her. That no.
Okay.
No, but then also it's a bit my fault, because if I don't say that I'm unhappy, how should she know, no? But I was very much trying for things to move quicker, to get more information and to be more efficient, right? And then sometimes I was a bit unhappy because I had the feeling it's all a bit slow.
Okay, yeah, okay, so we went through Christmas and then the first thesis committee meeting. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you said that this is helpful.
Yeah, this was then, rather than the big picture, this was then going down to being more precise about the project and the experiments to do.
Okay, now you needed to have some kind of structure.
Mm-hmm.
So before this you already had a lot of talks with Ilaria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot. And then there it was more, okay, this is the project, this is the main question. And then what are the experimental approaches? So then there was, a list of things that we discussed, that I was reading about, of experiments that I did or that I will do.
So was it helpful because you had the chance to write your project, or because because of the feedback the committee gave you?
I think it was useful in 3 different ways, because it was a deadline to get something a bit more defined together with Ilaria. Second, it was good for me to, have something together that is thought through from the beginning to, not the end, but at least to a certain part, something that makes sense. And that, also for me knowing where to start and to start thinking in this direction and driving a project. And the third one was obviously getting input from additional people that tell you, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense.
Okay. And after, okay, so then you already had your project with good feedback and you felt like you had more...
And then it started. And then it really started to take off. So after Christmas, then during spring, I started to do, proper experiments that even made it in the paper. So where, analysis and start doing experiments and finishing them. And then for me, it then took off and then it didn't stop anymore.
Okay. It stopped like last week.
Yeah, but then...
okay, so we're done.
No, because then I knew the project we had better, so I was not so dependent on Ilaria. Like, I became less and less dependent on Ilaria. So then, of course, I was happier and happier, no? Especially because I could just do the things my speed, and I could plan myself, so I did a lot of things. And then I had meetings with her all the time, basically, giving me direction or discussions when there were problems. But for me, it was fairly smooth. So then it went fairly smooth until like the end of the second year, probably. Where then, but this was a project-dependent problem.
What do you mean?
I was stuck. I didn't know how to continue because I just didn't find. I knew what I had to do and what I had to find, but I just didn't find it. So it was very frustrating because we, at that point, we knew we had a phenotype, so we knew that our immune cells play a role in metastasis, play a role in tumor, but then we wanted to know why, and that was just not. We just did not find the factor for a while. And then it was quite frustrating because we didn't have a very good way to screen. So the way how we were screening was very laborious, very boring, very, very frustrating because it all didn't work. And so then, but Ilaria and me were equally frustrated about this. So it was not that she put pressure on me or the other way around, but we were just both being frustrated that we are stuck here. So we started trying a lot of different things. Until at some point one of them started to look a bit more promising. And then it took off again with a lot of work and things that were working fine. And at this point was when my project split in two.
Your project what?
Split in two.
Okay.
So that was basically end 2013, beginning 2014, the project split in two. Because before I tried like 5 different things. 3 of them were working quite nice. So we continued on those. And then basically one was the metastasis project, and the other one was the primary tumor initiation project. So in our heads it was one project, it was the same principle. But then when we were looking for the how and for the factor, we found one that looked like working in metastasis, but it didn't work in the tumor initiation. So therefore this then since beginning of 2014, I did not really work on this, what became now the second project anymore. Because then even when it broke apart, but I continued doing both, but at some point I kept in a time for both. Because then what happened beginning of 2014, we had quite promising data, but the project wasn't finished. There was quite a lot of things were still missing. But then Ilaria decided to, start going to conferences, start to present the story, to get, feedback from outside and things like this. And then what happened in April, or March, April, I can't remember. April? I think it was April. She came back from a conference, basically the first or the second one that she was ever talking about this project. And at this time, we already started to think not about publication as such, but like which journal, and we started to put the data nicely together so that you have, if you put the data together, you see where the holes are, and you start having a story in your head that you want to tell, Yeah. And then you see, okay, because then if we want to conclude this is still missing, because you do experiments all the day, so you have this is all, but then you really have to sit down, put it all together nicely. Like you can already do this in a paper format, but that doesn't mean that you submit tomorrow. It just means like, okay, now I have it organized, this is how we want to write it, so what is missing, So we were a bit in the process of, putting things together and looking at what is missing, because there was still a lot missing. But then Ilaria came back from this conference and said, okay, we have to submit next week. So I got a heart attack.
Sorry?
I got a heart attack. And I was like, what? Because basically we were endangered to be scooped.
Oh, you mean like there were other people working on the same topic?
On similar things. Back then, similar things. Now, over time, we of course worked on the project a lot.
So this was in March, April?
I think it was April 2014. And then we submitted in May.
What did you submit in May?
The paper to Nature.
Oh, so you've been 1 year
and a half doing that, yeah.
Wow.
We're coming to the frustrating part now. Huh? But as I say, when we submitted, was not because we thought it's complete, it's a nice story, let's submit it. We knew it's not finished, but we knew we are running out of time because we have competitors, therefore we submitted so early. And therefore we had such a long revision time because the project was not finished when we submitted the first time. It was a miracle that we, managed to stay in there for so long. I don't know how we managed. I think we were just so annoying that, I don't know. No, but what happened was that Ilaria came back from this conference and she went there knowing who was going to present, and that was another scientist, a woman from San Diego, I think, that also had a title and an abstract about the same immune cells, also in metastasis in the lung, but, looking similar, but the mechanism was a bit different. So Ilaria wanted to talk to her to think about publishing back to back. No, because initially if you have very similar stories, you just corroborate each other, right? So you can do together. And then she told her no, that it will take her a long time to send things. So then Ilaria said, well, but then we cannot wait because we want to send in the next 6 months or something like this. Okay. But then this was the first day of the meeting. The last day of the meeting, Ilaria was talking with a very big scientist that is Italian also, but I think he's based in the States, but I'm not sure. And he then told her that it's a pity that he didn't know about her work before, because now he is trying to publish back to back with this other woman. So she was lying to Ilaria very clearly,
she was about to publish, and she didn't want to.
Well, not about to publish, but they were sending for publication. So basically what you can do with big journals like Nature, it's quite a lot of work to put the manuscript together. So what you can do is you write a so-called pre-submission inquiry. So you send a short letter to the editor that is summarizing your story and maybe gives the main figures or something, asking the editor if there's a general interest in the topic and in the story. And then if there is, then you submit. If then the editor tells you, look, I don't think so, then you don't go through all the pain and work to put the manuscript together, because that's quite difficult. And basically what this Italian scientist told Ilaria is that he, together with this woman, they did a pre-submission inquiry together to publish back to back, and it was positive. So then Ilaria knew, well, we knew, that Nature has an interest in the topic, because we were preparing for Nature Medicine. We were having in our head a different journal, because we didn't think it was going to be good enough for Nature, because it was not good enough for Nature at that point. There was pretty much the reason. But then Ilaria came back and said, okay, we have this problem. That these two, because back then our message was neutrophils help metastasis.
But
now,
you didn't know how?
Well, we had an idea. We had a molecule, but we didn't really know how the molecule was working. But we had the molecule. But the big message back then was that neutrophils help metastasis. Now the message of our paper is a lot more complex than this. So now we are not even in competition with the others anymore, because our competitive message was neutrophils help metastasis. Now our message is far beyond that, because the project became a lot more complex. So now these are not actually problematic for us.
And have they published?
Both of them did not publish it. So the last thing, well, I can maybe start, like, continue there, and then, because there's a timeline behind this, and then we did hear things in between. So basically what we then did, Ilaria came back, 10 days later we submitted, but we didn't sleep so much in that time, huh? And so we did submit also to an editor that Ilaria knew there, because she came to the LRI, this editor came to the LRI like a year before, and Ilaria presented her the story, and the editor thought it's interesting. So we submitted it to her attention, and basically at Nature everything is taking 100 years.
Sorry?
They take very long to decide everything. But then it went out for revision. So then when this happened, Ilaria wrote to the Italian scientist telling him that they submitted and that it's out for revision. So then he answered her that they are still waiting for the decision, basically, so that they are. Because
I'm
at
sorry,
the end...
I'm not sure if I understood. Ilaria wrote the Italian scientist saying...
Because he was nice with her, keeping her updated, no? So she thought, I'm nice with him also, I keep him updated. And so then he told her that they submitted.
As well?
Yeah, that he and this other woman, they submitted, but like a week after us. We were quicker.
Okay.
But it doesn't help, no? You have to have it accepted. Doesn't matter when you submit. Who cares? That they submitted, but that they don't have an answer yet. And this was the end of the communication between Ilaria and them. Pretty much. So then what happened was that it was sent out for revision. It came back. The revisions came back. They were quite bad, and we were rejected. So then we were fighting the rejection, because we had three reviewers. One of them was quite positive. One of them was asking strange things that were not relevant, but asking a lot of things, like on the immunology side. And one reviewer was very, very, very negative, saying that what we see is not true. So then we were fighting this, saying that he doesn't have any scientific proof for saying that what we say is not true, because especially this particular part, we did not invent this. This was published before by other people, we just took it over. So then we could convince the editor that these reviews from this particular referee were probably a bit biased. So then she said, okay, you can resubmit. So then we were doing all the experiments that we were asked, pretty much all of them, which took us from June until we submitted in February again.
So you had a lot of time to work. How much they give you?
At Nature, you don't have a time limit.
So they wait for you? Because
no.
What happens if the other team publishes?
That's it, bye-bye.
They tell you, oh, they published, so your paper
No, they
is not
don't even
relevant.
tell you. You send it back, and then they tell you. because basically we then, we needed to do a lot of experiments, and it was quite tricky because we needed to figure out the mechanism and the pathway, and we had no idea. So we tried millions of things, and I didn't go on holiday this whole time, and I was dying. But we tried everything to basically make the study comprehensive, to basically fill all the gaps, and it's difficult to fill gaps. So we were quite lucky, and then we found something that at least partially is responsible for what we see, and that we could experimentally show, because there's still another thing that we are quite convinced that it's happening, but we cannot experimentally show that. But then we managed to experimentally show this and submitted again on the 13th of February. Which I know because I was flying to California the next day, so it needed to be that day. Then we submitted, and I think we could answer pretty much all the concerns of all the referees, except the first one that was a bit biased. But even there, we could have, an answer for all his questions, either our experimental data or other publications, and then send it. But then what happened was that our editor changed. So we went to a new editor.
When after February?
In February, it went, instead of going back to the first editor that was there in May and June, it went to another editor. This other editor was like, okay, and sent and liked it, and again sent it out for revision, because the editor can also say, no, I don't like it. But she sent it out for revision again, back to the same 3 people, and to a 4th one, basically to balance out the first one, which I think is a bit unfair, but okay. And then we had the additional problem that the 3rd reviewer, that was the one asking the most experiments, was not available anymore. So then we got a 5th. So then we had 2 reviewers that were completely new that saw it for the first time. Okay, so then they sent it out, we got the comments back, and the comments was, it's not good enough, you're rejected.
Rejected again?
Rejected again.
When did you get the new feedback?
Oof.
Around?
Like a month later, maybe 6 weeks later, I can't remember the exact
middle
date.
June? Middle March?
Yeah, probably in March, middle or end of March, something like this. Or in March, when in March, I don't know. No, it was middle or end of March, because I was on holiday for a while.
So when was it?
Mid-end of March.
Okay.
We got again the notification that we were rejected. And we were again rejected on the basis of reviewer number 1.
Of what review?
Of the same reviewer that was the first time, no? So the other reviewers were fine. Reviewer number 2 didn't ask anything. Reviewer number 3 was not there anymore. Reviewer number 4 and number 5, they were very positive. Both of them were very positive. They had some comments and some questions to do, because they have never seen the manuscript before. For them it was new. So they had some comments that was like 2 months of work, maybe 3, nothing. Nothing. For me it was nothing, peanuts. And the problem was that we were rejected again on the basis of reviewer number 1. So then we rebutted again. This time we had to rebuttal officially through the system, so we put an official complaint, which took a very, very long time. But basically it was counting like another revision. They were saying that we basically complain about the quality of the comments of reviewer number 1, and we want him to be excluded. And this took quite a long time, but we won.
How long?
Like 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, like 1.5, 2 months. But during that time, I already started doing experiments, to answer the other comments. So then he invited to resubmit, and then I was working like crazy. And then we resubmitted in July, mid of July, like 17 or something like this. We put it all together, we sent it back. It was a new editor.
Again?
Because then I was afraid that we are going to have new reviewers again, no, and things, and I thought, oh my God, they'd never leave us alone. So we sent 17th of July, and then the editor came back to us saying, okay, I like it, I send it out for review.
Sorry,
And
you just said you resubmitted.
17th of July,
Okay.
and the new editor liked it and again sent it out to reviewers and explained us that it will be sent to the same reviewers, and that because of this complaint that we had, what will happen is that the reviewers will review our manuscript, but also the comments of reviewer number one, hopefully in a positive way. But because of this special situation, the whole thing took forever. And then the email that we received was on Friday, the 15th, 14th, 13th, 11th of September, which was, 3 days before the submission of my thesis. Because then we sent a paper and I went to write the thesis. I had 3 weeks, I had 6 weeks.
In September.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I needed to, so we submitted 17th of July, we submitted, and then I had, very close 2 months to write my thesis. That was due on the 15th of September. And on the 11th of September, we got the email from Nature saying that it's accepted. That we have to do a lot of changes. That we had to do a lot of changes, but that is accepted in principle. But I couldn't even celebrate because I was writing my thesis, and I had 3 days.
Nice
Yeah.
story.
And then it's not over.
Still have papers.
Yeah, sadly it's not over. So what we knew in between, well, I forgot to say what we knew in summer of 2014, or let's say 9 months until, so halfway through the whole process, Eric, so the PI next door, came back from a meeting and told Ilaria that he met this woman, no? And but that she did not know the connection between Eric and Ilaria. So that she was presenting the story, and then Eric asked her about, if they have been, what happened with them and things. So then she told him that they were rejected and that they did not submit again. So we were afraid that they might submit it to a smaller journal, because there was literature coming out in between, basically on their mechanism. So they started to really have a problem because there were other people publishing very, very similar things to them. We, meanwhile, managed to make our story bigger, moving away from the message that neutrophils help metastasis, but getting more into the how they can do that.
Sorry?
Moving more into how this is happening. And
Okay.
this was new, and this was different from how other people showed it before, like an additional mechanism, basically, and an additional function. But then I can come back to it was accepted. But then we needed to do a lot of changes to the manuscript.
Okay, so, but what you just told me, did that create some kind of crazy house in the lab?
No, it was already crazy, huh? So the moment that we were in revision, that was insanity for everyone.
Which one of the revisions? All of them?
All of them.
Okay.
So there is panic, no? So you get the comments, you have to do it. There's panic, especially short before you send it, and then you have a bit of time to relax, and then it comes back, and then it's going on again. So you really have to relax in between.
So in your case, can we say that your paper was publication-led? The experiments you had to do were because of the comments you got from the reviewers?
The second half, yes.
Yeah.
The first half, no. The second half was, I didn't need comments from anyone anymore, because the only thing I needed to do was what the reviewer asked us to do. And now, but the paper is still not out because we had a lot of problems afterwards with Nature, and it's a never-ending story, so I hope at some point it's going to be over. Because then Nature, they changed their policy about publications containing tumor growth data.
Wow.
And
Well,
we were among the first publications that will have to fulfill these new policies. So we didn't really know what to do. They didn't really know neither, so nobody could explain us, so we lost a lot of time.
what was the policy? Was it something?
Yeah, so that now you have to give them details of every. So now you have to provide, to publish, you have to provide a lot of background information. So you have to provide the raw data for certain types of experiments, not for all of them, but for certain types. And that's a lot more than it was before. So I spent quite a while to dig out this information and put it together. And then the way how you display graphs changed. So you cannot display now a bar graph anymore, but you have to put the individual data points. But because obviously our manuscript was quite old, no? So I needed, then to go and find the original files with the original data points and then put the points in for all figures that are, so we have 14 figures with I don't know how many graphs per figure. So that took a while also. And then for statistics, they told us there are new regulations on which statistics to use for which type of experiment and for which type of scenario. So we needed to redo statistics on many of the things that we did. And then, some of those still showed the same trend, but were not significant. So then we did try to see how we can, display this different. And then we needed to, some of the graphs were not significant anymore. So then we needed to write the editor saying, okay, with this new analysis, we don't have a star. Then the editor was fine. But things like this happen, which then led us to change the position of some data from the main to the supplement. Just because, you don't want to. Because sometimes, you do 3 experiments to show one thing, no? And we had all 3 significant. And then redoing the statistics according to how they wanted, suddenly 2 of them were still significant, but 1 was not. But this 1 was in the main figure and these 2 were in the supplement. So we wanted to change, no? But then, of course, you have to ask the permission of the editor to do that because this was not reviewed by the reviewers. Little things like this. And then what was our biggest problem was the new regulation on recording tumor growth data, where they wanted us to give them the measurements of every tumor that is contained in our publication. So I went back to find this information and then put it there. Also, we needed to include a lot of statements on animal welfare. And the reason why that happened was because we had no idea. We didn't know, because we thought that there was a problem with our work. And therefore, we needed to do all this extra work that no one ever did before. Okay. But then I looked at the Nature homepage, and basically what happened there was that they had a paper retracted because they severely exceeded their license in this paper. And that therefore Nature needed to react in terms of animal welfare, and now Speed introduced this new policy that then was affecting us, but because nobody really knew how to do.
You felt like you were doing something wrong.
Yeah, so we thought that maybe they were unhappy with what we did because we didn't know why we were checked into such a deep detail. But then at some point they were happy with all of those, and then it went to be, so they were happy with all of those on the 6th of October, which I know because I have my online system where it tells me all the dates. So on the 6th of October it went to the to editing for printing. And it stayed with them until 2 days before my viva. So on the 18th of November, 2 days before my viva, they sent us back the pre-proofs that we needed to send them in 2 days. So you can imagine my happiness. Okay. Because it was quite a lot of work. Because it is quite a long manuscript. Well, the main text, no, but then all the rest and the figures, and I did find quite a few mistakes, and Ilaria also, so we needed to change quite a few things. So it took me a day. So I was delighted that I do this exactly there. And that's where we are right now. We sent the pre-proofs on the 20th, and now we are waiting to get the real proofs and the publishing date, but we don't have that yet. So I hope it's happening this year.
Does it make a difference for you?
It would make a difference for me because of if it would be 2016, in theory that would be better, because you have your publishing record, so you have to publish within the last 5 years, no? So then, even if it's only a month later, it would count a year longer, no? However, I'm applying for postdoc fellowships, and they have deadlines. So I have a deadline 23rd of December.
Oh.
That I did already ask them if they, because for this you need a first author publication. So I did ask them if it has to be out already by the 23rd of December, or if it's enough to be accepted. But they didn't come back to. I think usually it's fine. It's fine.
Sure.
But
what's the difference?
No, I mean,
for them,
it depends on the state of acceptance, because you can be accepted in principle, but until it's printed, you don't really know what is happening if somebody is scooping you. Then I did hear stories that people were scooped a week before they started printing, and then they were kicked out. So it depends a bit.
Yeah.
But but then I have to say that half of my PhD was decided by 5 reviewers chosen by the Nature editors.
Okay.
And in between, it was Ilaria, but also what I have to say is that Caetano helped me a lot. Because he's an immunologist, he was my thesis committee member, and I had a meeting with him at the beginning every 3 to 6 months, later once a year, to present my data and get his input. And that was also while we prepared the manuscript. Ilaria contacted him very often, so he was reading the manuscript and always before we submitted, and gave his input and things like this.
Who wrote the first drafts of the...
Ilaria wrote the manuscript. I wrote the figure legends and materials. I wrote, so she wrote the main text. I wrote the figure legends, the materials and methods, and the supplementary information. And the figures, she made the main drafts, and then, I jumped in helping out here. Okay. But she wrote the manuscript and designed and made at least the outline of the figures that then, I made look a bit nicer.
Okay, and what happened? Is there something significant that happened in between? Something that you, this was an important moment besides of the publication dates and the submission dates, or it was all led by?
No, there were some important moments, which was very early was this external fellowship that I applied for, that I got into the second round, but then I didn't get it. But this was here.
Okay.
And this was disappointing. This was very disappointing. But then in between, let's say, it continuously grew, because my project continuously grew. So then I suddenly became, and the project became more and more important, so I needed to present like once a year, every 6 months, to the institute in different scenarios of meetings or things like this. Also then in the last year, I did go to quite a few conferences to present here and to get to know people. And this was very interesting, it was very nice, I really liked it.
When was that? Since when you started to?
So I went to one conference that was in April 2012. Okay. That was very early. That was a summer school on immunology, which was completely useless, but very interesting.
Because you met people?
I learned a lot about immunology, and it did influence the project a lot, because I understood that I have no idea what I'm doing and I need help on the immunology part, which was then me going to Caetano and saying, please.
So you said it was useless, but
in terms of, it didn't really bring my project forward because nobody there, because also I didn't present my project there. So I was just there learning about, immune cells and the immune system and immunity and things. And then I understood that I don't know enough to do this properly. So then afterwards, I went to get help. But it's not that the conference itself did not really show me how to do, but it made me realize.
You have attended like how many conferences so far?
We had a few student conferences in between. I went to two. One in 2013, one in 2014. In 2013, I co-organized because it was in London. They were both in June. But I was organizing. So scientifically, I was organizing the scientific program, so I know the science that happened, but I didn't contribute much myself because I was having too many things to do in organizing. And in 2014, also in June, was in Heidelberg.
Where?
Heidelberg, in Germany. And there I gave a talk. It's the only time that I was speaking about the project. Well, it was the first time that I was speaking about the project outside of this institute. And I was there. Then in 2015, in February, which was basically, we needed to submit before that, because I went to California to a conference. And then I went to another conference in June 2015 in Barcelona, well, in Sitges, close to Barcelona. Yeah. And then the last time that even before that, in May 2015, I had my interviews for postdoc positions in Spain. But no, not true, in July, I'm sorry, not in May. In July I had this. And I accepted the position in August. Yeah.
So, the theory about like groups says that at the beginning you have a period of anxiety, a lot of anxiety, because nobody knows what to do, nobody knows each other, so you don't know exactly what to do and who are your friends, who are not. And then you start negotiating rules. You start looking at the leader for guidance and more rules and norms and etc. Sometimes the leader is not very good, so you get mad at the leader, and some others like the leader. So you have two groups fighting, and then when the problems are solved, because now everybody knows what the project is about, the projects are about, then they start working. So everything is about working, and then they all have to leave, so they all become very emotional. So I don't think it's like that, but I'm interested in like the different kind of things that happen. Would you say that there is some kind of?
I think it's true, in large part, but because you have to see, people don't all start at the same time and don't all finish. So you have like different people at different stages. So I think for me and for Yaither, because there was no one intellect, really. So we had probably a different dynamic than how it would happen in other labs. Because when we came to the lab, we were the most important people from the beginning. So there was not really space for anxiety, because, we were the only ones being there, so any attention was for us. And this Ilaria was always very much, with both of us. I never had the feeling that one was more important than the other. Never. However, over time, because Luigi joined a year after us, then Yaither and me were already at the stage where we were quite independent, and we were, so Ilaria had a bit more time for him to help him get started. But then after him, the other people that came later, Ilaria started to have less and less time, because she needed to spend a lot of time with Yaither's and my projects in order to get them published. So then the people that came in new, especially I guess the ones that were affected were predominantly Misa, and a bit Sathya and Laurie that started a bit longer than a year ago. Because they came exactly in the time where Yaisa and me were freaking out, being busy, trying to get the paper out. The same for Ilaria, that needed to help us as much as possible because nobody else could help us, right? And then it was a bit, Ilaria had less time for the new starters to really get them a defined project and get, because for her these publications were so important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that during that time, which was probably 6 months or a year, I would not be surprised if the people like the three that I said felt unfairness and might have felt unhappiness because they were for sure not getting the attention from Ilaria that they needed, which I know that Ilaria is aware of that and is very, very sorry for that, but she just couldn't change that because for her these publications were so important. And then I think that, I hope nobody took it wrong in terms of personal, that it would be Yaisa or me, because it was not. Yaisa or me was the project.
Mm-hmm.
I think for Luigi it wasn't that bad because he was a bit more independent at that point already, but he was also affected a lot. And now what happened with Yaisa and me being quite synchronized with our periods of stress, and then having, I don't know, but we just managed to do all the things always synchronous. And then her paper also being accepted in a very similar time frame, no? So they were accepted within a month, both of them. So then Ilaria's attention moved a bit away, dramatically away, from Yaisa and my projects, but towards the other projects in the lab. And that caught some people a bit by surprise. And now suddenly they start feeling a bit pressure, especially Laurie, because Sathya then left. And Misa...
Sathya left. He finished? She was working on the PhD?
Yeah, she started the PhD first year. She left after a year, basically because it didn't work out between her and Ilaria.
Okay.
So they both decided that it's probably better if they don't, because they just could not work together. They had communication problems, like one said A, the other one did B, so it was just as if they would speak two different languages. It was amazing. But it's the same for me, because I was supposed to work with Sathya like I'm now working with Freddy, and at the beginning I thought that I couldn't, because we could not communicate. Really.
With Freddy?
No, with Sathya.
Oh, sorry.
I was so like I started working with Sathya a bit like I'm working with Freddy now. I didn't have that much time, so I really did not have that much time. But then it basically, let's say Sathya did, just the way how she was thinking and the way how she wanted to do science did not really fit in the lab. So then Ilaria and her together decided it would be better if she would do her PhD somewhere else. And now she does it in Leeds. So she started in October in Leeds.
Did you got a MPhil, something like that?
No, because she wanted to leave before, because she had this position all ready to take up the
Oh, great.
And then Misa, she now with attention from Ilaria shifting away from Yaisa and me a bit more towards Luigi, Laurie and Misa. Luigi they was happy for this to come. Misa was too much and she decided not to finish. And Laurie is now trying to catch up and surprised and a bit stressed now because there's so much attention but also expectation then in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that then after Christmas is gonna, they are gonna find their rhythm and things.
Okay, so I have to ask about, again, maybe it didn't happen, but when did you have more like tension, or when there was more tension in the environment, in the lab? If there was.
Okay, we had, between Yaisa and me, we had a bit of tension more or less after a year, which I think was fueled by both of us being quite strong characters, and in a way, both of us being very driven. And let's say me having the project that was running better, but still being unhappy, because you're always unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And Yaisa at that stage had her project that was running, but not giving results yet or anything. So we were both in a, let's say, very stressed situation.
Frustrated?
No. For her, I cannot say. I think so, but I'm not sure. I don't know. But I don't think that this was the reason for this. I think that it just didn't help. Because then we had, some situations where, you think the other person said that and things like this. So then we had another word.
Okay.
No, we had some fights.
Over?
Not over something. It was more personal, about our personalities. That was the basis of the fight.
Okay. So it didn't have to do with...
It didn't have to do with, I need this reagent, you don't give it to me, no. It was more, therefore I don't think it's so relevant really to the lab, because it depends on the personalities. And we are both quite similar. We are both very loud and very strong characters. So we, at some point, you crash to each other. But it did not have anything to do with work. It was all outside work.
How did you manage that? How do you overcome?
Talking about it, and then that was it. Talking about it, and then time made us both realize that we were wrong. No, but because we were both very open, talking about the problems that we had, therefore we had such a messy fight, because we were, talking about it. So then, the other person became frustrated. But because we continued talking about it, we managed to remove these fights entirely. And now we are really good friends. But otherwise, if we would have never talked about this, we would until now be a bit like, So then at the end, I think that the fighting brought us a bit closer together. But that was while we were still, that was after a year. But it didn't last very long. It was probably during the summer. Then the other moment of tension was when it happened 2000. What year are we in? It happened in 2004.
Sorry? 4?
Yeah, 2004. That was the other moment of tension in the lab where...
2004?
Oops. No, 2014 is true. There was 2014, which was when Laurie and Satya joined. Because at that moment it was quite difficult, because there were problems in the lab with Misa, because she was not really finding her rhythm, and according to Ilaria, not working enough. And Ilaria did tell me that, and I don't know who else, but she shared with me that she's concerned about Misa because she's not working enough. Also, the problems that we had with Rob were peaking. They were just not sustainable anymore. He became, not only was he not working, but he became dangerous because he gave people wrong information. He destroyed experiments of people, not willingly, but just because he didn't know. So it became quite unbearable, because you needed to control everything that he did. And at some point, because Yaisa and me were the ones running the lab, right? And then it was at the point where both of us just did not have time for anything. So we couldn't double control what he did anymore. So therefore, a lot more of his mistakes remained unnoticed, and then actually, problems came up. Additionally, 2 new people started within a month, which were Laurie and Satya, that both of them wanted to do things, but were probably a bit frustrated because Ilaria didn't have so much time for them because she was with Yaisa and me. And I think there was a lot of tension in the lab, which it became a little bit better because then Rob officially took up another position in January or February of 2015. But then another type of tension grew, and that was...
Sorry, in this case the tension was between...
Within the lab.
Within, like...
like there was a bad atmosphere in the lab.
Because the new people felt that Ilaria was not there helping you all the time.
Yeah, and then also they were trying to ask Yaisa and me for help. We didn't have time because we already didn't know how to do. So then sometimes we were like, look, we don't have time. And then they maybe felt disappointed by us also. Additionally, Yaisa and me were stressed like hell, and we just suffered. We were both constantly in a bad mood, and we are very everyone notices how we feel. So obviously this made the atmosphere in the lab quite tense, no, because we were both tense.
Okay, and then Rob was not exactly helping hand, so you were...
He wanted to, but everything that he created was more work for Yaitha and me, which made Yaitha and me explode every once in a while, because we were just like, this cannot be. And
you had to talk to Ilaria, so it created the tension between you both and Ilaria, because you blamed her for...
No. Ilaria noticed very quickly. Ilaria noticed after 6 months that Rob was in the lab with us that there's a problem with him. And she asked us very early on to tell her when he's coming, when he's leaving, what he's doing. We didn't really want to report that, right? Because we thought, look, I mean, it's our colleague, no, we are not going to do this. But then over time it started to affect us in a negative way, because he was supposed to order and then he ordered the wrong things. So we needed to tell her, look, I could not do this experiment because I told him to order that, but he ordered something else. Things like this. So Ilaria understood very quickly and was from the beginning always on our side, and she tried a lot to find Rob something to do and to make him, useful. But at the end she became so angry on him herself that then we traditionally, was probably bringing the lab into quite a strange situation, because Ilaria was really angry on Rob, because you can imagine. So she was really angry on him. Then she was quite disappointed by Misa, because she was just a bit, she could have done a lot more. But then, she went on holiday and she didn't tell anyone, and then, she just did not really work much. And then, so this was support, like this, Ilaria was disappointed by this. Additionally, there was this constant fight for the 2 publications of Yaitha and me. So this
for what?
The publications. There was this constant fight with the editors. That is so frustrating, and a lot to do and a lot of tension. And then the new people that came in, that of course Ilaria understood that they are quite demanding and that she cannot really fulfill their demands. So that of course also made her a bit unhappy. So therefore Ilaria, to start with, was in a strange state. Then obviously the people involved, like Rolf, noticed that Ilaria was angry at him, so he was a bit grumpy. Misa, the same. Yaitha and me stressed until the limit. So we were so stressed. If you would tell us something, sometimes we would be just like, what? So sometimes I became very impolite, because I just had so many things to do, so I needed to tell people, look, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this, without really meaning it bad, but I was stretched to the limit. So then of course people took it bad, no, because it was bad, right? And then Luigi also there becoming a bit unhappier because his project didn't really work, and Ilaria didn't really have time for him neither. The newcomers, Lori and Sathya, like no time for them at all, them being quite unhappy. It became a bit better, because then Rob got another position. It became a bit less stressful for Yaitha and me, because the publications, like we send it back, and then we spend most of our time actually waiting for an answer from Nature rather than me being stressed doing experiments, no? But then, so Ilaria also then had more time with Lori, with Luigi, with Misa, with Sathya. But then what happened was that there was this clear problem with Sathya in the lab that was compromising everything. It was very obvious that Ilaria didn't want to continue working with Sathya, and that a large part of the lab supported Ilaria with that. I did, because I tried to work with her and I couldn't. I just understood that you cannot work together if you cannot talk, if you don't understand each other. However, then of course Sathya was fighting for staying, so it was a bit of a weird situation all the time. Because Sathya really had a problem with the boss, the boss really had a problem with her. We were all trying to work as much as we could, like losing our head over this. And then there was just always, every meeting was a bit like strange, because that there is this. And then then Ilaria clearly telling Satya, look, I want you to leave. Satya's like, I don't want to leave, I want to stay. And that was just a very strange situation. Until then, Satya understood at some point that it's pointless to work with someone that doesn't want to work with you. But then, of course, because she tried so hard to do things, she bothered everyone quite a lot in between, which everyone would do, which was normal, right? But then we were a bit like, okay, if we help her, the likelihood that she's staying is longer, but we actually think it wouldn't be good for her personally to stay. It would be better for her to go somewhere else. So we were all constantly having the feeling, well, all, me and some of the people that I was talking to, not all of them, but I constantly had the feeling that if I would help her, I actually do something bad for her. And that just, was a very strange situation. So then there was a lot of fresh wind coming with, during the summer, Yaisa and me were writing our thesis, so I was out of the lab. I have no idea what happened in that time because I wasn't there for almost 2 months. I was in the room writing. And then in September, mid of September, was when Freddie and Anna joined, and then like 2 weeks later, Anna, our scientific officer, and this was also the time when Satya left, and the lab changed a lot. It became a lot more relaxed because, let's say the strange situation around Satya left with her, obviously. Then Yaisa and me relaxed. We went from 1,500 to 1 because we submitted the thesis, the papers were accepted, so we relaxed a lot. Then the new people came in that were like full of motivation and things, and finally people having time to really, like Ilaria to start with, but also Yaisa and me to really help people to get started and help people with, because now we are the most experienced people in the lab, so we can help them a lot. So now it's Yaisa working with Anna and I'm working with Freddie. Freddie basically continuing the project that I stopped working on beginning 2014. So he's gonna continue that, and Anna will continue parts of what Yaisa did. So we try to teach them how to do the things and like the data that we already have and how to amend on this. So for them now it's a little easier because they have Ilaria as a supervisor, and now at least for a few months Yaisa or me that show them hands-on, and so for them the start is a lot quicker than for us.
Okay, 1 second. Sorry. Before this is the transition. So I want to make a brief stop. I don't know if you want. Can I get you more water or something?
Oh, I'm good.
Before that, there's something well, of course I don't understand, but I'm very curious about like what you did with the zebrafish. The zebrafish. You did something, an experiment with it.
No.
You were saying something, and it was like something like funny, but something that you didn't want to mention everyone. So it was like, what?
No, I told you that we had this frustrating time to find the factor, to find the mechanism, no? For the paper. That we then found between summer 2014 to February 2015. That was...
So, since when, sorry?
From summer 2014 to the end of the year, February 2015. Yeah, maybe even earlier. Maybe actually it's not true. Maybe it's not summer 2014, it's beginning of 2014. It's the whole year. Sorry about this.
Yeah, that's okay.
The whole year. But, so we had our phenotype, but we didn't know how. So we tried to find out how. So we tested millions of different hypotheses and we did screenings, and it was all very frustrating. And then at some point, there was an invited speaker, another scientist came to give a talk, and he was talking with Ilaria, and she showed, I don't even know if it was him or her, our data. And then this person told her that there was a publication not so long ago about a study that was done in zebrafish that might be relevant to us. So then I looked at this study, and I was reading at this study, and they looked at these lipid mediators that we then ended up to study and to characterize better. So the thing about the zebrafish was that this study in zebrafish was the one that helped us find this mechanism.
So, but you didn't mention that in the publication. You just said that you found this one among many others.
What we say in the publication is that we screened for several different factors, and that we chose those depending on the literature. But we didn't cite this specific paper. The reason why we couldn't cite the paper is because we have a limited number of citations in the Nature paper. So you cannot cite whatever you want. So we needed to be very careful with what we cite and what we don't, and we just did not have space for this.
So how many references did you?
30.
30. I think it was, yeah, Ilaria told me, I'm not sure if she was talking about you or Jaisa, that there is some like important guy in the field, and you or maybe Jaisa said, I'm not going to cite this guy because I don't like him.
Yeah, that was me.
That was for your thesis or for the paper?
Both. Yeah.
Was that risky?
Yeah, because now I have to write about his work in my thesis.
Oh, that was a comment.
But I don't think it's relevant. So actually it's not true. We have him cited in the paper. I did cite some of his papers.
Oh, maybe it wasn't the dissertation then.
Also there, I have him cited, but, you know, if you have a review about metastasis in cancer, they're like 5. So you choose 2 or 3. And I just never chose his. I just chose the one of the other people. I mean, it's fair enough, no? I have a basis for not liking him. And therefore, because I think that he was our reviewer number 3. That gave us a lot of things to do and then just stepped away. Also, but I still did like his work a lot. So I considered him as, you know, somewhere where I wanted to do my postdoc. So then when I went to one of these conferences in the one in Barcelona, he was there also. And then he gave a talk, and I thought, oh my God, it was a good talk, but then it was so political, like he was hitting so many people with a knife, you know, like the work of other people. So he was just not a nice guy, like basically telling other people that their work is nothing and that he has the ultimate truth. And I didn't like that. And then on top of this, the same day, there was a dinner where I asked to sit on his table, so I was sitting next to him. And then I tried to talk with him. I tried to, you know, talk with him about my work or things. So he basically told me, oh, he doesn't want to talk about these things because he just doesn't believe that this is really happening. I was like, what? And then I thought, okay, whatever. So then, because there were many other people, so, you know, it was like, and then I stayed there. So after the dinner, no people left, also he left. I stayed on the table with another girl that I met there, and we were finishing the wine. No, I mean, what do you want to do? It was good wine. But then he came back, being a bit tipsy, being like, oh, there are these beautiful girls that were having dinner with me, so don't you want to come there to the disco and dance with me a bit and things? So therefore I decided, if I don't have to, I'm not going to cite him. I'm sorry. I know that this is a bit unprofessional, but I did cite him. He's cited once in the paper, and he's cited a few times in the thesis. But then what he's working on is he's also working in metastasis, using the same mouse model that we are working with. But then he doesn't study the same immune cells that we study, but another type of immune cells. And therefore I thought that it's not very relevant. I mean, we cite him once or twice, but then I didn't think it was very relevant to discuss this in detail, because there are 15 types of immune cells, and I discuss my immune cell. If I discuss his immune cell, I also have to discuss all the other immune cells in the world. So I didn't. And now my like my thesis committee, well, not thesis committee, like, you know, my examiners, one of them thought that I should discuss this a bit better and introduce, like, you know, discuss this work in my thesis. So I did ask him why, because I did not see the relevance, because it's a different type of cell, no? And then he said, well, just to have a comprehensive picture, and because I would really like to read, you know, a comprehensive summary of this. So I thought of, okay, if you ask me to do it, I will do, but I don't see the relevance. I am doing it, I don't have a problem with that. No, I just don't understand why it's relevant. And my examiner could not explain me, to my satisfaction, why this is relevant.
Oh, because it was relevant for him, her.
I don't know, he for sure has his reasons that I cannot really comment on because I did not understand them. But I did try to talk with other people about, because they asked me, no, what do you have to do now? So I explained them, no, I have to write this and this, but without, I know that I can be very judging the way how I say things. So if I don't like something, you know. But even if I tell them in a way that, no, because I have to do this and this and this, I have to write it. So they're like, why? What does it have to do with your thesis? And I was like, well, I don't know, but I will do that.
Okay. So last part, I don't know, I have a couple of, but I'm running out of battery. That's why I'm checking my phone all the time. 1 second, please. Okay, so you know if someone in the lab has a Samsung charger?
Me?
You?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But this one that works via the computer.
Sorry?
It's
it's
a
just a
USB
cable.
charger. But you can use one of the computers, so you can charge it there a bit if you want to.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes.
Yeah. I
Okay.
have one.
So, I'm interested in understanding like this period of transition, especially with you and Freddie. Like, what are the kind of things you are teaching him?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Maybe not so specifically, but what are the things that you think are more relevant for him to know? Like,
so first of all, I have to say that this is nothing that I decide all alone by myself.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
No,
sure.
so Ilaria has more than an influence on that. So she's pretty much dictating this, no? Because it's a mixture between teaching him and also still doing experiments that are relevant for the project. Because she
Okay.
needs some answers quickly, because she's writing a grant that is due beginning of next year. So she needs this data in there. So therefore it's a bit...
Just the data? It doesn't.
No, the data, like the results of the experiment she needs in there.
I mean, but not a publication. Okay.
These will be the 2 publications of Yaisa and me now. That will, but then she has to write this grant about what she will do next. So for this you need some preliminary data. So therefore parts of the things that Freddie and me are doing now are actual experiments in order to answer some of those questions, which then of course he's also learning how to do that at the same time. I'm gonna get another coffee, sorry. Because I don't drink water, I drink coffee.
Really?